Have you ever stopped to think about the invisible war being fought on the seas, far from the headlines we read every day? It's a war that involves some of the world's most dangerous players, the US, Venezuela, and the ruthless drug cartels that have entangled themselves in the geopolitics of Latin America. But how exactly does the US strike at these shadowy organizations from thousands of miles away? How does one of the world's most powerful military forces wage war on speedboats in the open ocean? And what does that say about the war on drugs? It's 2 a.m. Somewhere in the Caribbean Sea, a sleek black speedboat slices through the waves, its engine roaring in the quiet of the night. A single man aboard, his eyes scanning the horizon, has no idea what's coming next. In a matter of moments, his boat will be reduced to a smoldering wreck. But what happened next shocked everyone. The war on drugs is often painted as a battle fought on land, on street corners, in dark alleys, and in the back rooms of illegal drug trade deals. But the ocean, it's a different world entirely. A place where cartels have been shifting massive amounts of narcotics, hidden in plain sight, speeding under the radar of the world's most advanced surveillance technology. And that's where the US military steps in. Through the eyes of the MQ-9 Reaper drone, or the silent, deadly strike of a Hellfire missile launched from a distant warship, the United States has transformed the fight against the drug cartels into a high-tech, high-stakes operation. It's a world where speedboats loaded with cocaine become targets, and where the cartels, once elusive and untouchable, are no longer safe, not even on the open sea. But who are the men behind this fight? And what happens when a country like Venezuela, led by a regime that supports these cartels, stands as the primary roadblock in the US's war on drugs? This story is about a cat-and-mouse game between powerful enemies, but it's also a tale of precision, danger, and an unyielding will to stop the flow of drugs that have ravaged communities on both sides of the border. It starts with one man, a captain of a US Navy destroyer, standing on the deck under a sky full of stars. His mission is clear, but the stakes are as high as they come. Intercept the boat, take it down, no room for error. He presses a button. High above, a drone like an eagle in the sky begins its descent. It's not just a machine, it's a lifeline, a connection between the Earth's surface and the might of the US military. This drone, equipped with cutting-edge surveillance, can lock onto a moving target with terrifying accuracy, but the boat beneath it is moving fast. Every second counts. The boat captain might think he's alone, perhaps even safe in his anonymity. But he couldn't be further from the truth. The strike is already in motion. A Hellfire missile fired from a ship miles away cuts through the night air with a hiss of certainty. It locks onto the boat's engine. Boom. In an instant, the boat is gone. Its mission to deliver illicit cargo, drugs, has come to an abrupt end. But this operation wasn't just a single missile strike. No, this was part of something bigger, something deeper. The US has been fighting drug cartels for decades, but this war has evolved. And so have the tools. The Hellfire missiles are one part of the arsenal, but the real power lies in the surveillance systems, satellites, drones, submarines, and intelligence gathered from dozens of sources across the globe. There's a story behind the men who control these systems. The operators who sit in their command centers, thousands of miles away from the action, watching these high-stakes missions unfold in real time. They're the ones who track the targets, who make the decisions, who have the power to change the course of the operation with a single command, tracing its heat signature, following it like a shadow. It's almost too fast for the human eye to follow, but the missile is relentless, its path assured. One such operator is Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a 32-year-old Navy officer who has spent years working her way up the ranks. From her command center, she watches as the boat speeds across the open water, unaware of the missile that will soon end its journey. She knows the stakes, not just in the immediate mission, but in the You always wonder if what you're doing is enough, she once said in an interview. We do our best to stop the flow of drugs, but it's like playing whack-a-mole. Just when you think you've got one down, another pops up. That's the reality of the war on drugs. A constant evolving battle. And the US isn't just fighting drug cartels, they're also combating the regimes that shelter them. In Venezuela, a country already in turmoil, drug cartels have found allies in the form of the government. The political relationship between Venezuela and the US has been strained for years, but it was the cartel's growing presence that turned the situation into something far darker. In 2018, the US escalated its strikes against Venezuela's cartels, launching a series of targeted operations aimed at crippling the trafficking routes. These weren't just coordinated missile strikes, but strategic moves across land, sea, and air. The US Navy would use its warships, equipped with advanced radar systems, to track and intercept vessels in the Caribbean. Alongside that, drones would conduct surveillance, while submarines carried out intelligence gathering without being detected. Together, they formed an invisible wall, encircling the cartels. But the US wasn't only striking at the cartels, They were striking at the heart of a regime that allowed this narcotic trade to flourish under its watch. By 2020, reports began surfacing that the US had launched covert operations that involved direct attacks on cartel warehouses, secret stash houses hidden along Venezuela's coastline, and even the capture of cartel leaders who were once untouchable. These operations would become known as Operation Black Lotus. The question that arose time and again: was it worth it? Was the war worth the loss of lives on both sides? To many, the answer was clear. For every drug boat sunk, for every cartel leader captured or killed, a small victory had been won in the fight to save innocent lives. But for those on the ground, both in the US and Venezuela, the cost was immense. The missions were precise, but they carried a heavy price tag: lives lost, families torn apart, and entire communities living in the wake of these high-stakes operations. And so the war continues. Behind every strike, there are real people, real lives, and the consequences of this battle are far-reaching. For every boat that sinks, every mission that succeeds, there are still so many questions left unanswered. How far should we go to stop the cartels? What price are we willing to pay to make sure no more drugs reach our shores? And perhaps most importantly, what happens when we make enemies out of entire governments in the process? The war on drugs is far from over. And as the oceans remain full of dark secrets and untold stories, we must ask ourselves, what are we willing to sacrifice to win this fight?